Okay, we're recording. Well, welcome everybody today to our ongoing coaching meeting. And I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking to you guys about something that I've seen that keeps coming up that I think is really important and that I think will be helpful to many of you guys today as you're just beginning this journey and trying to figure out what some of your initial steps should be. So I want to talk to you today about two things: WIGTake, your WIGTake question, and your Envision. And I want to help you make a kind of a goal by the end of this little session as to maybe some kind of a timeline where you can finalize these. So WIGTake, what is WIGTake? Some of you guys already know what that is if you've read the book. It stands for what's it going to take. Your WIGTake question is usually a question something like, what's it going to take to reach all of the certain number of people in this area? It's kind of the God-sized dream that you've had as you've prayed and asked the Lord about, what your mission is in your area. And then the Envision is essentially the answer to that question. What's it going to take? And the Envision is your vision, what it's going to take to see that accomplished. Now, the reason I want to talk to you guys a few minutes about WIGTake and Envision is because of a couple of things that have happened the last few weeks that I want to tell you about. And then I want to give you some more details about this. So last week, you guys know Victor was here. You guys got to check out that video if you weren't here. If you haven't, Bev or some of you guys have been added to our Slack. I can add you later for sure. But Victor has a video in there from last week. You guys can check that out. But I was reminded, you guys, with how powerful that was, that it started with a strategy coordinator named David Watson with the International Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention going to India and asking the WIGTake question about Victor's area. David Watson went in and he said, what's it going to take to reach all 90 million Bhojpuri in the next 20 years? And he thought, well, we can't do church the way we've always done it if we're going to reach 90 million Bhojpuri. And that's when David felt like God was leading him to pour into these 5 Indian guys. And Victor was one of them. So just that WIGTake question, what's it going to take to reach the 90 million Bhojpuri, catalyzed what Victor talked to us about last week. So again, shows you how important that WIGTake question is. Also, Dustin, who's on the call, who is working in Midland, Texas, would call me this week, and he was so excited, and I'm sure he'll tell you guys about this soon, but he had been casting vision to some of his friends to join him, and he said, Chris, I got to be honest, now that I finalized the Envision statement, it's so much easier to cast vision with that. Having that Envision has made it so much more compelling to my friends than trying to explain to them what DMM is, right? Which can take some time, and usually you have to go through a training to even partly understand what somebody's talking about. So when he mentioned, hey, this Envision was helpful to me, it reminded me again how important this is. And then last, me and some folks that are working with Thai people here in DFW have been going through something that I've told some of you guys about called an outside catalyst training. And this is Curtis Sargent, Stan Parks, Bill Smith, some of these guys that have come together it was kind of an event in Houston. And it's been recorded and they've made this into lessons, but they were talking to outside catalysts, people that live outside a people group, about how to reach or make disciples of an unreached people group almost remotely, or as an outside catalyst, they used to call them non-residential strategy coordinators. Well, anyways, so we're going through this OCT training, right, with Stan and these guys by video. And the very first thing they have you do is develop a prayer team for yourself and for the work that God is leading you to do. So we've talked about that. But the second thing they tell you to do is to work on an Envision. Basically, right after you've put together a prayer team for yourself, you're thinking about Envision. What is your goal? What has God called you to do among this people group that you're trying to work with to hopefully see reached? So we've been working with our Thai team here in DFW, and some will be working in Thailand, in crafting an Envision statement for our Thai work. So you put all these things together, and it just reminded me, we need to talk about WIGTake again, right? We need to talk about Envision again and how important this is. So we'll read you a quote. Let me put it in the chat here. You guys can see it when I read it. By Stephen Covey. This was in a resource from the Outside Catalyst training that was encouraging us to craft an Envision statement for our work. I thought this was a great quote here. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People said, to begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you better understand where you are now, and so that the steps you take are always in the right direction. This is crucial, you guys, even in DMM. Now listen to this next line. I love this. This is why I wanted to show this quote. If the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster. Know what I mean? We can just start taking next steps that we think are great next steps, but if your ladder's on the wrong wall, you're taking next steps to the wrong destination, right? That's why we've got to make sure at the very beginning, in this outside catalyst training they're telling us at the very beginning, make sure your ladder is up against the right wall so that as you take next steps up the ladder, you're going in the direction you want to go. So if the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster. We may be very busy, we may be very efficient, but we will also be truly effective only when we begin with the end in mind. So this again is why envisioning, as we often call it, is so important. If you guys remember in the DMM training that some of you guys just finished, some of you did this years ago, some of you have taken other people through it. What does it say in lesson 4 about Envision? And you guys, I think I have this close to being memorized. I'm sure some of you guys will memorize this too, because this is such an important statement. And it's this. Let me just copy and paste it so you got it in the chat too. This statement is huge from lesson 4. Significantly, the movement catalysts God uses, which we hope to be some of those, right? You want to be a movement catalyst in your area. So do I. So significantly, the movement catalysts God uses seem to be people who are willing to receive a God-sized impossible vision to see a whole city, nation, ethne, or language reached. Do you guys remember this? So important. When I lead this training, I read it like 3 times, okay? So I'll at least read it twice for us. Significantly, the movement catalysts God uses seem to be people who are willing to receive a God-sized impossible vision to see a whole city, nation, ethne, or language reached. So my question for you today is this: do you have your God-sized impossible vision nailed down? Do you look at it every day? Is it a sticky note on your computer monitor? Is it framed on your wall? Is it sitting there somewhere on your desk? Do you know what your WIGTake question is? And then do you know what the answer to that question is? Ultimately, your Envision. That's what I want to talk to you about today, and just remind you, if you haven't totally finalized it, you've kind of started working with it, but it's not finalized such that it's in a frame or where you can see it. I'm going to encourage you to begin to work toward that. So here's how you come up with an Envision statement. And you guys know some of this from the training. Number 1, you start with a WIGTake question. What is the WIGTake question? The WIGTake question is basically expressing the dream that God has given you. For us in West Texas, as you guys know, if you've read the book, our WIGTake was this, because we wanted to see all 1 million people in West Texas reach for Jesus, right? So then what was our WIGTake? Our WIGTake was, what's it going to take to reach 1 million in West Texas in the next 10 years? What's it going to take? That's not the vision, right? That's just the WIGTake question, all right? That's just the saying, hey, we want to see 1 million in West Texas in the next 10 years. What's it going to take? Because kind of the suggestion from that question is, I'm willing to do whatever it's going to take, right? We're willing to do whatever it's going to take. So as you guys are working in your area, the first thing you want to figure out is, what's your WIGTake question? Do you know what your WIGTake question is? For us, it's what's it going to take to reach 1 million in West Texas in the next 10 years? So the WIGTake question is the dream, right? And then the Envision is the answer to that question. The Envision is what it's going to take, right? That's the Envision. So you start with WIGTake, that's the dream. What's it going to take? The Envision is the answer to the WIGTake. So for us, our WIGTake was, what's it going to take to reach 1 million in West Texas in the next 10 years? You need to know your WIGTake. And here's our answer. Here's what it's going to take. Here's our Envision. It's going to take a church planting movement facilitated by a DMM process of finding persons of peace in PIPSI areas that start reproducing groups that lead to reproducing churches, such that 50,000 churches of 20 plus new believers are planted in the next 10 years. That's the Envision. Does that make sense? So you got the WIGTake question, then you've got some kind of a statement declaring our only hope for seeing the WIGTake happen is some kind of a movement strategy, right? And this is what it's going to look like. Let me give you an example of our one we're working on with the for Thai Buddhists, both here in DFW and in
Chris,
Thailand.
could you post that from yours? Could you post that? Yeah, I'd love to have that.
Sure, Robert. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So here's our WIGTake. We've got a fire truck going down our street here. Here's our Envision. There you go. So that's a good example for you. And if you guys remember in lesson 4, there's more examples in there too. Here's another example for our Thai, our Thai vision. Many of you guys know we're working with Thai people also. So our WIGTake question is this: what's it going to take to reach 59 million Thai Buddhists in the next 20 years? So let me put that in the chat. What's it going to take? This is what we're working on in that outside catalyst training. What's it going to take to reach, there's like 69 million people in Thailand, but Thai Buddhists, the Thai Buddhist people groups that speak Thai, both in Thailand and around the world, there's about 59 million of them. So like David Watson went to the Bhojapuri asking, what's it going to take to reach 90 million Bhojapuri? We're asking, what's it going to take to reach 59 million Thai Buddhists in the next 20 years? Because you guys, whatever it's going to take, we're willing to do it. My dad, even just this morning, sent me a picture. They have a lake house near DFW, and he'll come in on weekdays to pray at these Buddhist temples for the work here. And so he sent me a picture earlier, a selfie of him in front of a Buddhist temple that he sent to myself and one of the churches we're working with, reminding us that he's out praying for Thai Buddhists. So anyways, what's it going to take? Well, this is not official yet, but this is the Envision. This is the answer to the WIGTake that we're working through. This will change, so don't hold me to this. But what's it going to take to reach 59 million Thai Buddhists in the next 20 years? Here's a thought. Our Envision is to make disciples of 59 million Thai Buddhists by pursuing church planting movements with the help of existing movement catalysts through a multiplicative disciple-making process like DMM in every tambon, that's like a sub-district in Thailand, starting with vision casting and training to existing Christians and churches in that tambon, if any, and through new CPM engagements from nearby tambons, if no existing willing Christians and churches can be found, so that 2 million plus new churches of 20 plus Thai new believers per church are started in the next 20 years. That's, you guys, if we're going to see 59 million Thai Buddhists come to know Jesus, that's what it's going to take, right?
So Chris, do you guys sort of monitor yourselves and your progress at certain intervals? Do you then adjust and readjust your Envision or whatever?
Beverly, yes, great question. Thank you so much. So the Envision, I read this in one of the articles that we had to read as we were forming this Envision for the Thai Buddhists. They encourage your Envision to be flexible. Because Beverly, to your point, even in West Texas, our West Texas Envision, and I'll take more of these questions here in just a minute, but even in our West Texas vision, Beverly, we were thinking 1 million in West Texas. Well, we're a couple years into it, and what we're realizing, we're bearing a lot of fruit outside West Texas. We thought it would be in West Texas, but God's working outside West Texas. So we're not like, time out, God, time out, come back to West Texas. I mean, it's not, we're following the Lord wherever he leads. So yes, it's flexible. And you guys, I would say this, I read this recently. You want it to be really flexible in the first year, especially as you start to engage. So let me go through a list of 7 or 8 reasons why I think the WIGTake question, knowing it by heart, and your Envision are so important. Some of these you've heard, some of these may be new, but this is from my experience. Let me hurry through these so that you can ask questions. So number 1, let me put each of these in the chat. I was just thinking to myself, why is this important? Why should we talk about this? Number 1, your WIGTake and your Envision drives you to your knees because you know you can't accomplish it on your own. That's why it's important to keep it in front of you. It helps you remain devoted to prayer, right? If 59 million Thai Buddhists is staring me in the face every day, I'm like, there's no way we can do this, right? Drives you to prayer. One reason to keep that WIGTake in front of you and that Envision in front of you, that's God-sized, that God-sized impossible vision, it will continually drive you to prayer and remind you there's no way you're going to get this done on your own. Number 2, okay, let me copy and paste it here in the chat. Number 2, your WIGTake or your Envision, those two together, makes your strategy obvious. It makes a CPM approach your only option. Okay, so if you keep your WIGTake and your Envision in front of you, you know what you have to do, right? You know the only thing that can accomplish this. It's some kind of a movement approach. One thing Michael Hyatt said, who's a kind of a leadership expert, some of you guys may follow his blog. I loved this. He said, and this is what helped Dustin as he was casting vision to believers to join him. Michael Hyatt says, vision and strategy are both important. So vision or Envision and DMM are strategy. They're both important, but there's a priority to them. Vision always comes first, always. Here's why. If you have a clear vision, you will eventually attract the right strategy. The vision implies what your strategy has to be, right? Last sentence from his quote. If you don't have a clear vision, no strategy will save you. So I like that. I like that keeping your WIGTake and Envision in front of you makes your strategy obvious. It reminds you, Even if you get weary, you know, in the journey and movements, I mean, I know this is, but this is hard and I can just go back to what I was doing before. It reminds you 59 million Thai Buddhists. This is your only option. Okay, next one. The next one, reason I think this is so important, I got to move here. Your WIGTake and Envision keeps you from attempting anything that can't scale and multiply easily, right? If you keep that WIGTake and Envision in front of you, it keeps you from attempting things that can't scale and multiply easily. Why? Because you've got to reach 1 million in West Texas. You've got to reach 59 million Thai Buddhists. You can't do complicated things that ordinary people can't reproduce, right? You've got to remove complexity, remove barriers to multiplication, because you know you're not going to reach your Envision unless you do. You've got to keep it simple and keep it scalable. Your WIGTake and your Envision reminds you of that. It keeps you from attempting things that can't scale or easily multiply. Here's another thing that you guys will be encouraged by. Your WIGTake or your Envision together, they help you determine what to do next, like Bev was asking about. And this, you know, if you have your WIGTake and Envision in front of you, you can work backwards to today to know what you should do today. Your WIGTake and Envision, having that dialed in, make sure your ladder is up against the right wall, right? So that you know the next steps you're taking can lead to 59 million Thai Buddhists or can lead to 1 million in West Texas. You want to make sure that ladder is up against the right wall. So your WIGTake and Envision, keeping that in front of you helps you determine what to do next, helps to make sure you're doing things that are going to get you where you want to go. Another thing I love about WIGTake, your WIGTake and Envision, keeping it in front of you is this. Your WIGTake and your Envision give you a sense of urgency. They give you a sense of urgency. Here's why. As you heard mine that I shared a minute ago, most Envisions have some kind of timeline on them, which keeps you focused on your mission. Usually David Watson would encourage people to ask the WIGTake question about this generation. What's it going to take to reach 90 million Bhojapuri in the next 20 years in this generation? We're not just saying what's it going to take to reach everybody in West Texas in the next 1,000 years. We want to reach everybody in West Texas in the next 10, right? It's urgent. There's people dying and going to hell. So your WIGTake and Envision remind you this is urgent. We've got 10 years, we've got 20 years, we've got to see things multiply. Next, I think this is really helpful too, especially as you're recruiting people. Your WIGTake and Envision are often more compelling in recruiting others than a defense of your strategy. Think about that. Your WIGTake and Envision are often more compelling as you're recruiting believers to join you than a defense of your strategy. Here's why. It's like we were saying before with the Michael Hyatt quote. If you lead with your vision, the strategy becomes uncontroversial. Nobody's going to hear your vision for 1 million in West Texas and go, here's what we should do. Just the same thing we've always done. Because no, the same thing you've always done ain't going to get you to 1 million in West Texas. So then you've got to start talking about, well, who's ever seen this happen? Well, these guys have. Seems like everybody has seen this happen. It was with some kind of a movement approach. Okay, well, then obviously that's what we've got to do, right? Because you led with vision. That's what Dustin was saying. When Dustin found himself with his friends talking about DMM and then having to defend it. Like, why is this better than this? And if you start with vision, which his vision was to see 500,000 in the Permian Basin come to know and follow Jesus, the strategy is uncontroversial at that point because you only know one thing that's going to reach 500,000 people. You know what I mean? So if you're recruiting others to join you, lead with vision rather than a defense of your strategy. So you got to have your Envision to do that. A couple more. Next one. I think this is important. Your WIGTake and your Envision protects you from traditional church drift. And the reason that is as you keep that in front of you, you know traditional church, nothing wrong with traditional legacy church, but we know that we have to see multiplication to get the job done. Traditional church, because we know that approach alone can't accomplish our vision. If we keep the Envision in front of us, we're less tempted to go back to that because the Envision reminds us we have to pursue new multiplicative movement approaches, right? So it protects us from the drift of, man, this is getting hard and I could just go back to what I was doing before. And why don't we just do what we've always done? It's just so much easier. It protects you from that drift because you got 59 million Thai Buddhists staring at you every day, right? You got 1 million in West Texas saying, you can't just go back to the way things have always been. You've got to do something different if you believe God has given you this vision to reach 1 million in West Texas or 59 million Thai Buddhists. And then one more. Hopefully this is helping you. This last one I think is very important. Your WIGTake and your Envision remind you that you need to work with others to get this done, right? When we were casting vision, you guys, for 1 million in West Texas, never did I think, we don't need anybody to join us. I mean, we got 1 million, it's no problem. 59 million Thai Buddhists. Y'all don't worry about it. Find another people group. You know, it's not, we're going, hey, you want to join us? We need help. And we got 59 million people here. Okay. So your Envision, that big Envision, reminds you, you've got to work with others to accomplish it. You guys, when I hear about movements around the world, especially one in particular in Africa, they're talking about this movement, and you were to ask what organizations are involved, the leader of the movement would tell you there's about 600. You're like, what? 600 organizations? I mean, it's not one group owning this. We're all working together to see this happen. And so when you keep your WIGTake and your Envision in front of you, it reminds you, you need other people. We need each other. Susie's talked about recruiting people in her town, casting vision to other church leaders in her town. If we really want to see our towns or our regions reach, we've got to work together with others. And here's who we want to work with, okay? This came out of a couple of the sheets that we were reviewing for our Envision exercise with our outside catalyst team. This is what several of these folks overseas that have put these together said about recruiting others, church leaders, and so on to work with you. What you're looking for, they may not fully understand DMM, but here's what you're looking for. And I thought this was powerful. You're looking for a common vision for and commitment to the total evangelization of the people you're trying to reach. At least get people to agree to that, right? May not understand all the technicalities of the strategy, but here's what we're agreeing. We're going to do whatever it's going to take to see all of Atlanta reached, whatever it's going to take. And all of us are willing to hold all of our traditions and preferences and whatever with a loose grip. This is what Mark is leading teams to do. We're going to do whatever it's going to take. So what we're casting vision with is, can we get through the Great Commission, a common vision among these different people we're trying to partner with, in a common vision, in a common commitment to the total evangelization of the people group, not just reaching a few people, not just a couple hundred, a couple thousand. Who wants to join us in doing whatever it's going to take to reach everybody? Okay, so I'm not making that up. These guys, as they put the Envision together, as they cast vision to people, would say, look for people that are willing to make this kind of commitment. Okay, almost done. So there's an evaluation sheet that I wanted to tell you about that Stan shared with us when it comes to this Envision. And I will, I can share this with you, but let me just post these questions real quick, because I think this will help you now as you go from here and start thinking about this to evaluate where you're at and where you need to be. So look at a couple of these questions. It's asking, what is the vision of your ministry? What end result does God want to see as the fruit of your work? Like, what's your Envision? List your major current activities. What is taking the most time right now? And then here's the tough question we had to ask. Will our current major activities lead to our ministry's vision becoming a reality? Will what you're doing right now lead to your WIGTake and your Envision happening? If so, great. And if not, number 4, if you answered no to any of the above, what are your current activities going to lead to? And so number 5, what do you need to quit doing if your current activities are not going to lead you to your Envision? And then if you answered maybe to any of these activities, what can you do differently to be more certain that those activities will lead to your ministry's vision becoming a reality? And then number 7, if your Envision is to see a church planting movement, which if you've got a God-sized vision, it's going to be a part of your Envision. What should your major activities be? So this is a lot. Again, I didn't want to take too much more time, but I wanted to give you some things to process as you're thinking about your WIGTake and Envision. And here's my big challenge. I would like to challenge you guys through prayer and fasting and seeking the Lord to finalize with flexibility, like I was telling Bev, finalize with flexibility your WIGTake and your Envision by the end of the year. Would that be a reasonable goal? I mean, we've got a couple months, month and a half, but really nailing it down to where you feel comfortable printing it out and taping it to your desk, or whatever. I think for all those reasons I just mentioned, that WIGTake dream God gives you and that Envision that you put together will guide you and will help you and will protect you from the things that could cause you to drift. So because of the things that I told you about that I've encountered recently, I just wanted to bring this up and talk about it again.